Hello everyone, my name is Gary Brady and today I'm going to be discussing instrumentation, communications and telescopes, which is the project that I've been working on over the last 6 months. So as I was just saying, it's a 6-month placement with ILWEG, which is a branch of the Euro-Moon-Mars organization which was developed by the European Space Agency. I was supervised by Professor Bernard Fong, who's actually the director for Smart 1, which is the first European mission to the moon. Collaborators included over the course of the placement were Artis DLR, which is a German aerospace organization, AATC, which is the Analog Astronaut Training Center, Euromoon Mars, which is the organization that I worked under, and then Moon Gallery, which is actually just an organization as a part of the Euromoon Mars. So the Radio Jove, which is the main instrument that I used over the course of the placement, allows for audio from the Sun and Jupiter to be observed and recorded. It works by setting up an antenna and hooking it up to a receiver, which then you can listen in or observe through your software through an audio output. It intercepts electromagnetic waves and converts it into electrical signal. So for the antenna itself, it can be hooked up in either a single or dual dipole. And as you can see here on the right hand side, this is a single dipole setup. So you set it up on two masts about 2 meters above the height of the ground. And then you have a set width for the actual antenna itself, which is about 7.1 meters. This is set up this way for optimum gain of the actual receiver itself. And then obviously you need to set this device up in quite a quiet location or else you get interference from radio stations and static. So for the receiver itself, this here is the main box for the Radio Jove. You set up the antenna, hook it up to this little output, this input here on the back, and then you have two outputs here for the sound. So one is hooked up to your laptop, and then the other is hooked up to a headset, much like the one I have at the moment. And then here is how you adjust the power. So this is the power gain for the actual receiver itself. So if you're not hearing anything from the device, you can see some action on the software that you're using. You can turn up the gain, and then if your interference is too high, you need to tune using this dial here on the right hand side to try and find a frequency that is not polluted by things like I'll discuss now shortly. On the next slide, I believe. Yes. So reflections in the medium is one of the examples of interference that you can get. So if you do not actually set the device above well, at about a height of 2 meters, you'll actually get reflections from the floor as the device bounces back as it receives. So for the source here, this could be the horizontal plane for the actual antenna itself. The reflections will bounce back up towards the source, and then this causes a lot of interference. I experimented with this a good bit as well over the course of placement, and it definitely does cause a bit of a difference, leaving this up at a certain height. So for the highly populated frequency range, because this operates at about 20.1 megahertz, it's actually one of the ranges where planes, radio stations, static, electricity, everything like this is highly populating that range. So trying to find the perfect tuning location can be quite difficult. So what you do is actually set this device up in the most isolated area that you can. And as I'll discuss later on, I think I've found a very good place. So for the analysis itself, you use Radio SkyPipe, which is the software you'll find on the Radio Jova website. And as you can see here on the right hand side, this is just a sample of what it could be like when you were recording. So you have a galactic background level of about 1,000. And then obviously on the x-axis here, you just have time. So as the time goes on, you get more readings. And then this is the electrical signal that you're receiving from the actual antenna itself. Some of the samples here, so this normally what you see for a radio station, and then same for these two. It just depends on the frequency of the station and actually how well tuned it is for that station. The antenna disconnect here, so all the signal drops off, and then you static, which are mostly just these little bits of spike, and this could be electricity as well in buildings that are nearby. So for Leiden work, so Leiden was actually the main place that I stayed over the course of the placement. So it was actually like the home base, I guess you could say. And there's two main places that I worked in, which is the field, which you can actually see here on the bottom left image. I was doing some solar observations. So you set this antenna up looking directly at the sun, and then you don't have an eyepiece on this, or it burns everything nearby. Which we actually experimented with a little bit as well. I burned the mask that I have on my face there that day. um, but here, it's a reflection of the sun, and you can see it's just from white light. So it's actually how I could detect if there was sunspots on that day or sun flares, which then I would set up the radio antenna, so I'd hopefully get some readings. On days that there was no sunspots, the activity of the sun was very low, so I normally didn't get any readings. And then up here on the top is Kevin here, who is actually our astronaut, I guess you could say, for our instrumentation demonstrations. And then this was the lander that we were working on with the spectrometer here set up to analyze this rock sample, which could be collected from the moon, for example. And then you can see the camera here set up looking at what would be the rover getting deployed nearby. So as you can see here, actually on the bottom right image, Professor Bernard Fong himself supervising us while we were deploying our lander here. And then I have a pan cam set up just with my phone to observe the area, and then to take the initial picture of what is confirmation of landing of the lander itself. You actually have a drone here as well. And then the drone is actually to survey the area once there's a good landing. And then the rover actually deploys off a ramp here on the far side of this image, and then goes towards what would be a sample location that we would have observed from either the pan cam or the drone surveillance for the area. And then I was just during Leiden fieldwork and outreach. So parts of the outreach was actually giving presentations and doing workshops based on the instrumentation demo and the work that we were doing. So for myself, the Radio Jove, the PanCam system, and then how this all worked in conjunction with a lander, and how you would actually go about retrieving the samples with an astronaut, in situ astronaut, etc. And then just for another campaign that I was actually working on, which I was delighted to be a part of, is the MPOL campaign. So this is actually hosted by the Analog Astronaut Training Center. And what it is 6 people head inside of an analog astronaut training center module, I guess you could say, which is a habitat simulating a moon base. So for the first week, you can see here in the middle picture, I was the Capcom for the week. So this involved, basically there was another group that was inside of the habitat during that week, and I had to look after them. So any questions that they had all went through me, or any information that they needed from the outside world had to go through me as well. So it was a very busy week for me, and as you can see here, I have 2 laptops set up, and I was on a walkie-talkie talking to Agata Kolojetic, who is actually the main director for the Analog Astronaut Training Center. She organizes everything, and she was a very good help there while I was inside the base and in mission control. On the right hand side here, you can see our atmospheric balloon launch, which we did during our mission control week. This balloon actually reached a height of about 30 kilometers before it burst, allowing the payload that we had attached to be returned back down to Earth. And it actually landed in Ukraine, which we were unfortunate enough about, because we couldn't actually cross the border then, because it's not a part of the EU. So we had some issues there trying to retrieve some of the equipment. But a couple of months later, Agatha informed us that she got some of the instruments back. On the left-hand side here, you can see what I worked on, which is an aquaponics and hydroponics system. So the arrows here describe the rotation of the material as it goes through the system. So there's fish in this bottom tank here, which produce ammonium, which is then converted through this system into nitrites, which is then converted into nitrates, which the nitrates are then used to feed the plants. Most of the work that I did on this system was trying to actually get it functional, because in MPOL 1 and 2, which happened previously to ours, the system was functioning, but then during MPOL 3 we were actually missing a water pump. So when I went in on MPOL 4, which is our mission inside of the base itself, I worked on developing a water pump. So I did this using two water filters, connected them together using a hot glue gun, and then I got the system operational. And then by the end of the week, the plants were showing signs of growth, which I was delighted about. And then for MPOL 5, they actually showed pictures online about the system itself and how functioning it was, because all of the plants had grown. So the last campaign that I took part of was EMM Etna, so Euromoon Mars Etna, which is the campaign just happened there in July, with the Euromoon Mars Leaps group, Euromoon Mars TU Dublin group, and Arches DLR. And you can see here actually in the picture this all of the group that was involved. And we have Dr. Armin Vedler here, who's actually the director of the Arches DLR group. And they're working on some camera systems here with Lucas and Ricardo to analyze terrain, which could be on Phobos was actually the main place that they were looking at. So pretty much having a drone with a camera system set up, and then to analyze the terrain, so for distances, objects that are in the way, etc. Because of Mount Etna's hostile terrain, it's actually one of the best areas to do sampling for such a thing. The middle picture here is my radio antenna, so I actually set this up at night, and I had it facing off towards Jupiter to try and get some of the readings, which successful enough for me. I believe that I captured a Jupiter Esperis, which I talk a little bit about in my report, and I have a couple of manuscripts that I'm currently in the works of writing about some of the observations that I made over the course of the Euromoon Mars Etna campaign, as well as some of the things that I did in Leiden as well. And fortunately, we got lucky while we were there, and we actually got to experience an eruption from the center crater of Mount Etna, which you can see here on the image on the right hand side. This was taken from Residence Serra La Nave, which is the main location that we stayed between the 7th and the 10th of July. And then we actually got to witness a 500-meter lava fountain on that day as well. I believe it was the second day that we were there. While we were there as well, so for the actual testing itself, mostly what we worked on was a PanCam mockup and instrumentation demonstration. So a deployment of a lander, a confirmation of arrival or safe landing from the PanCam itself, surveying the area using the PanCam, and then situation awareness of whether or not you can actually go to the area using the rover, and then sample retrieval and sample analysis by our analog astronaut, and then also Hannah, which was our astrobiologist on the day. Yeah, so that's all from me and my placement. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation there as much as I enjoyed the placement itself. It was a fantastic experience. So yes, thank you very much. And there's just some of the references for some of the work that I did. Thank you very much.